In this lesson, we'll tackle big idea number 1 and number 2. So, how are organic compounds classified, and how does the structure determine its physical and chemical properties? We're going to start with learning target number 1. After today's lesson, you can provide the proper name, diagram, and chemical formula for a compound in the alkane family. Alkanes are aliphatic hydrocarbons that only contain single bonds. That's how you know it's an alkane. Since each carbon is bonded to the maximum possible number of atoms, alkanes are described as being saturated compounds. You might have come across the terms saturated and unsaturated when you were talking about fats in nutrition or in biology class. It's the same thing. Saturated fats have all single bonds. Alkanes vary by the repeated unit of a CH2. So they're what's known as a homologous series. And they have the general formula CnH2n plus 2. That means if I know the number of carbons in my alkane, I can quickly figure out how many hydrogens it has by timesing it by 2 and adding 2. Now, naming alkanes. Scientists use what's known as the prefix, root, suffix method for naming all organic chemicals. The name really describes the structure of the compound, and you should be able to take a chemical name and draw it once you have it. Now, the root part of the name describes how many carbons are in your main chain, or the backbone. The suffix tells you what organic family the molecule is in. And the prefix describes the type, the number, and the location of any branches on your compound. The naming rules for organics use alkanes as the base molecule, and then you add other rules for different families. So here are the steps for naming an alkane. Step number 1, you have to find the main chain, which is the longest consecutive chain of carbons. You use the appropriate organic prefix for the root name. If you've got 1 carbon, it's meth, 2, eth, 3, prop, 4, bute, 5, pent, 6, hex, 7, hept, 8, oct, 9, none, and 10, dec. Step 2, determine the suffix based on your family. Because we're dealing with alkanes, which have all single bonds, our names will end in ane, A-N-E. Number 3, you number the main chain, and you start by the end that gives any branches the lowest possible number. And number 4, you write the prefix by naming each branch as an alkyl group. You use the organic prefix for how many carbons you have, and you add a YL, that signifies that it's a side chain, and you put a position number in front of it. What carbon is it attached to? If there is more than one type of branch, you write the branches in alphabetical order in the name. If there is multiple of the same type of branch, you use a molecular prefix, like mono, di, tri, tetra, in order to indicate how many you have. And finally, formatting. You always put commas between numbers, and you put hyphens between numbers and letters. Now there's a lot of rules there, so let's do some examples. Example A. I need to find my longest consecutive chain of carbons, so my main chain. That would be going straight across the page here. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. So the root of this compound is going to be a hex. And because all of those carbons are single bonded to each other, I have the suffix ane. It's an alkane. Now I don't have any other carbons hanging off as side chains, so my name is complete. I don't need a prefix here. So example A is hexane. Example B. My longest consecutive chain of carbons is the 4 going straight across the page. And then I have a 1 hanging off as a side chain. So the root of my name, if I've got 4 carbons, it's going to be a bute, single bonded together, ane. Now I need a prefix to describe that side chain. Rule number 3 says I number my carbons so that my side chain gets the lowest possible number. If I start here and number them left to right, I'll have carbon number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So my side chain is going to be on carbon number 2. My side chain only has 1 carbon. So meth, and I put a YL there to represent it's a side chain. So I have a methyl butane. And it's on carbon number 2. And I always put hyphens between numbers and letters. So example B, 2-methyl butane. Example C. My longest consecutive chain of carbons. I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Remember, the main chain does not need to be straight. It could be kinked, so don't get fooled. Always look for the longest consecutive chain. That gives me a side chain of 2 carbons there. Now because my main chain has 6 carbons in it, the root is going to be a hex. They are all single bonded to each other, so ane as my root. Now, if I start numbering my carbons 1, 2, 3, that will give me a lower number than if I start here and number them 1, 2, 3, 4. You can start numbering from either end. Always pick the one that gives you the lowest number for your groups. Now because my group is 2 carbons long, it will be called an ethyl group. And it's on carbon number 3. So 3-ethylhexane. Unfortunately, when you write the names backwards, like I just did, sometimes you end up with some extra space. There should not be a space between your name. Now, I would like you to try out example D and E. They're harder ones with multiple groups on them. Try them out and get the answers in the next video.